Sony is known as the pioneer of home console performance. They popularized the capabilities of disc-based media for home consoles with the PS1. The PS2 has sold more units than any other dedicated game console. The PS3 was a juggernaut with ambitions as large as its difficulty to code for, and both the PS4 and PS5 are the perfect examples of hardware under $1,000 still being more than enough to squeeze an extreme amount of performance from extremely complex games. Each of them has pushed the bounds of home console gaming in their respective eras and massively shaped the experiences of folks really into gaming. If Sony released something like a PS5 Slim that stripped away all that performance in favor of the most compact design possible, there'd be millions of people simultaneously wondering what the heck they thought they were doing. For a company like Sony to release a low-powered home console that undermined their key marketing of best graphics, best performance, and best console platform for real gamers, they'd have to be out of their... Oh, well, I guess I should have been talking in the past tense because they've actually already done that before. The PlayStation Vita TV, shortened to PlayStation TV when it hit North America in October 2014, almost a year after its November 2013 Japan launch, is a curious case of hardware born from executives chasing trends while one of their main product pillars crumbled beneath them. This tiny set-top box is quite literally a PlayStation Vita's internals squeezed into a smaller chassis and stripped of a controller, display, battery, camera, touch panels, and, well, basically most of the custom hardware that made the PlayStation Vita a PlayStation Vita. The only real commonalities between the two systems are the proprietary memory cards, PS Vita card reader, and a UI that's very similar to the handhelds, albeit tweaked ever so slightly for navigation via controller instead of touch. Of all the things to carry over from the handheld Vitas, I'm unsure the proprietary memory was actually the right move. Instead of something like 16 gigabytes of internal memory, the device only packs 1 gigabyte, which is enough for maybe like 3 smaller Vita games, but yeah, that decision is kind of the whole vibe of the product. It's kind of awkward. Aims to push the Vita platform in a weird way without really using the Vita name, and doesn't make a ton of sense from a 2023 standpoint. However, considering the landscape in which the PS TV launched, there was a time when a product like this actually seemed to fit perfectly. You see, y'all gotta remember the consumer tech world as it was a decade ago. Both the Wii U and Vita were flailing for market relevance while various news outlets and analysts waited for the apocalypse of home gaming by the hand of mobile game publishers. In 2013, Gabe Newell, the poster child for PC gaming, told The Verge, Apple has gained a huge amount of market share and has a relatively obvious pathway toward entering the living room with their platform. I think that there's a scenario where we see sort of a dumbed-down living room platform emerging. I think Apple rolls the console guys really easily. It seemed inevitable that the monumental success of mobile gaming was going to spread like the plague to wipe out large swaths of the traditional gaming industry. Was that the right assumption to make in hindsight? Well, maybe not. We've seen more integration than destruction in the years since, after all. But it made sense then, and the market responded. Among the rise of mobile fervor and streaming services, set-top boxes started to hit the market, promising a convenient place for media and light gaming. Companies like Nvidia started exploring ways to make Android into a more gamer-focused platform. Roku, Apple, Google, and Amazon started releasing streaming-focused devices. And a swell of interest meant Android-based microconsoles being brought into conversations more often, culminating in the infamous failure that was the Ouya microconsole. There's no doubt that Sony felt some pressure from the market it had tried and failed to court years earlier with the Xperia Play and its PlayStation Mobile offerings. In many ways, they weren't in a good place to compete by 2013. considering the newly launched PS4 was a spectacular home console, but pretty expensive, while catering more toward dedicated gamers rather than the casual crowds bolstering the mobile gaming market. There's no doubt the Vita could have been the more compelling choice, but as I outlined in our previous videos, the Vita was kind of expensive itself for a variety of reasons, was already in trouble by 2013, and Sony seemed to have one foot out the door as it sought to drive focus toward the more performant PS4. It kinda would have made sense for them to repurpose the Vita branding for a cheap set-top box that could handle popular streaming services, as well as a plethora of smaller gaming experiences that could eventually be ported to an Xperia phone, or Android more broadly. Maybe throw in a bundled TV remote and sprinkle in some Vita and classic game support for dedicated fans? I mean, even today, having something like that in place of the Chromecast with Google TV connected to our dining room TV sounds rad as heck. But no. Instead, we got the PlayStation TV. As I mentioned before, the PlayStation TV is essentially a Vita board in a tiny box with a few additional ports added in. Unlike any of the Vita models, they included a USB-A 2.0 port, an HDMI port, a network port, and swapped out the original proprietary charger with an old-fashioned barrel jack. All of these changes amount to about the smallest, most lightweight set-top box I've ever seen. Unlike a more traditional console, it can fit into about any setup and could probably even be zip-tied to the back of a monitor or velcroed to a wall without an issue. Given that it launched at $100 and could, hypothetically, play any games available on the Vita, it honestly seems like it could have been an easy product to recommend to anyone vaguely interested in gaming who is also in need of a cheap-ish set-top box. Yet, it received mixed reviews at launch due to a slew of glaring omissions. For one, while a bunch of streaming apps available on the regular Vita were eventually available on the PS TV, certain apps like Netflix and YouTube were sorely missing. In fact, unless folks were invested in media purchase from Sony's own marketplace, the lacking app support on the PlayStation Vita made the box a very lackluster media machine. Some of the missing apps could be accessed via the web browser, but the Vita browser has never quite been the best browser available, and using it without a touchscreen still isn't great. On that note, interacting with a PS TV at all requires either a DualShock 3 or DualShock 4 controller, both of which are decent controllers, but not ideal for using the device outside games. Some TV remotes were actually compatible with the system, according to Sony. Unfortunately, they weren't widely advertised and had to be sourced separately. Combined with the use of the Vita's bubble UI instead of Sony's home console design language, it's clear that there weren't enough considerations for the console as a home media device. Given that set-top boxes like Roku and Apple TV had already nailed the UI, apps, control elements, etc. years before the PS TV released, calling it a compelling alternative device is a bit difficult. Even if they had the best UI though, there's the issue that the PS TV lacked full support for the entire Vita library out of the box. Unsupported games weren't random edge cases either. Some of the largest first-party games weren't supported, like Uncharted Golden Abyss, Gravity Rush, and Little Big Planet. In fact, Vita Player found that about half the EU available games they tested back in 2018 either weren't playable or required an additional awkward control scheme. To be fair, part of the problem of porting Vita games was definitely out of Sony's control while trying to create a device like the PlayStation TV. After all, strip away all the custom input elements of the Vita and certain games start to break. Kinda like the eventual Gravity Rush port. Certain games just need to be tweaked quite a bit to work with standard controls. Plus, early games needed to be updated to support the microconsole by developers, whereas later games required developers to actively enable PSTV controller support. At minimum, it shows a lack of forethought from Sony as to how game compatibility would work, especially for first-party games. There's this feeling that they just put the system out there without thinking about user experience too deeply. Luckily, there was at least one main selling point for the PS TV that worked well: PlayStation 4 Remote Play. For that, it works great, with the added benefit of a wired connection increasing stability quite a bit over the Vita's 2.4G Wi-Fi connection. And it still feels more stable than many modern devices streaming from my PS5. If you were all in on PlayStation 4 at launch, there was actually a benefit to buying one of these to use with a second display in your home without shelling out for an additional console 3 to 4 times the price. That admittedly appealed to a niche audience though. Plus, it wasn't the best solution for the best quality gameplay, considering the PS TV's output tops out at 720p, albeit being the highest resolution remote play experience until the app actually expanded to Xperia phones in 2014. But, given all of this, you can kind of see how the PS TV didn't take off. Sales numbers for the PS TV were so low that Sony's quarterly financial reports don't even break PS TV sales out from Vita sales, which also weren't great. To top it off, they discontinued the console after only 2 years, officially making it the worst selling and shortest lived Sony console of all time, removing any chance for a redemption story and, more importantly, a sequel. Which, it's kind of frustrating, to be honest. I can imagine a modern version of this box running Android and being a great system for streaming apps and mobile games, especially with PlayStation Plus Premium being decent enough, and a ton of older games being underutilized in Sony's catalog. Yet, the final product that actually launched feels a bit hollow. Luckily, if you pick up one of these today, the fan community has stepped in to enable some additional gameplay experiences. Since it's essentially the same hardware as a regular Vita, it could be modded just as easily. That opens up a ton of options for non-Sony retro game emulation on top of the already solid support for PSP and PS1 emulation. Kinda like its handheld siblings, the PS TV's become a sorta neat little retro gaming box, and probably the best way to play some Vita games on a large screen. Especially since more Vita games can actually be played on the PS TV these days. Back in 2015, a whitelisting workaround was created to enable more games to launch on the hardware, even if their controls didn't fit perfectly with DualShock controllers. Not all Vita games are actually beatable on the console, but at least having the option to play the games makes the box more useful than when it launched. Prices also still hover around their $100 to $150 starting price. And for that price, it's an interesting novelty, if nothing else. So, yeah, actually, that's kind of a good description of the PS TV overall. A novelty of a console that died fast and hard due to the lacking support of its creator. In many ways, it's an accelerated mirror of what happened to the handheld Vitas over a longer time period. And like the handhelds, it's a kind of nifty device these days, if you can grab one for cheap. Now, what could have ultimately saved the PS TV? It's hard to say, but it's clear that the streaming sticks and set-top boxes that continued well after the PS TV's demise were successful due to their focus on streaming services, even over the light gaming support that many of them have adopted over time. Maybe with a cleaner UI, an easier controller, and broader streaming service support, at minimum, Sony's idea of a microconsole that could serve as a TV hub and classic gaming machine would have taken off. But I guess we'll never know. Ultimately, those are my thoughts though. I'd love to know yours. Are you someone who owns a PlayStation TV and has thoughts of your own? Would you like a small box like the PS TV to stream shows and PlayStation games on a random TV? Let me know down in the comments. Also, as always, if you found this video interesting or informative, go ahead and give it a like. And in a future video, I'll be digging into some additional tech from around the same time period as the PS TV, including the disappointment that is the Ouya. So make sure you get subscribed so that you don't miss it. That's going to be all for this video though. Until next time, catch you later.